The eating disorder anorexia is profiled in a 2-episode arc in the TV series Degrassi, The Next Generation. The symptoms of anorexia can be divided into 2 categories, the physical symptoms and the behavioral symptoms. The physical symptoms of anorexia are, in general, a thin and emaciated appearance. Dizziness and fainting is often a physical symptom. We see in this picture where Emma passes out after not having eaten the entire day while she's at school. And another physical symptom common to anorexics is an intolerance of cold. And we see this symptom when Manny notes how cold Emma's hands are in the first episode. The behavioral symptoms of anorexia are often a refusal to eat. This is evident in Emma when she hides the french fries in her pocket instead of actually eating them. Excessive exercise. Emma forces Manny to go jogging with her to continue burning calories. Anhedonia, which is not taking pleasure in things you used to find pleasurable. Emma withdraws from Manny and does not enjoy things she used to enjoy doing, such as her Rainforest Activism Club, and a preoccupation with food and body image. Emma keeps a diary of all of the foods she eats. She cuts out pictures of thin models and is constantly talking or thinking about food. So before looking at the neurological causes of eating disorders, we should look at the superficial causes of eating disorders. The first one is a desire to be thin. We see this in both Emma and Manny. Manny wants to lose weight for an upcoming audition, and Emma wants to look thin because she thinks it's physically attractive. The second one, which is more subtle, is a need for control. Emma's parents have separated recently because her father cheated on her mother. This is a very big source of stress in Emma's life that she cannot control, and there are several quotes from the episode where she says, "I feel like I just need control." The superficial causes of an eating disorder and science both indicate the reward system as playing a large part in eating disorders. The quote you see there is, "They seem to find little else rewarding in life aside from losing weight," and that is from the first scientific paper, which you will hear more about in just a second. There are 2 sort of aspects of Emma's anorexia that are that point towards the reward system and also have to do with 2 literature sources that I found. The first one is the self-perpetuating nature of anorexia and the reward cycle. Once weight loss begins, the patient feels rewarded and then continues to want to lose weight. And the collections of pictures of thin models as sort of an inspiration to stay thin. So this first study pertains to the self-perpetuating nature of anorexia. It is called Increased Dopamine D2, D3 binder recepting after recovery from anorexia nervosa measured by positron emission tomography and 11C raclopride. The background of the study is that they wanted to study dopamine binding in recovering anorexics because they believe the reward system is important in eating disorders. There is both observational and scientific evidence for this. The observational evidence is the symptoms of anorexia are related to the reward system, such as anhedonia and depression, which we talked about earlier. And the scientific background is reduction in dopamine metabolite HVA has been found in recovering anorexics. So from this information, they decided to study the dopamine receptor in recovering anorexics. The hypothesis of their study was that recovering anorexics would have less intracellular dopamine in reward-related brain areas, such as the ventral striata, because higher than normal levels of dopamine are binding. And to observe this, they compared 17 recovering anorexics and 17 control women, and by PET scan, they measured 11C raclopride binding because the binding of that molecule is positively correlated with dopamine binding. So here are the results of their study. This graph shows C raclopride binding in both healthy on the left and recovering anorexic women on the right. And we can see from this graph that there is a higher amount of binding in the recovering anorexics than in the healthy women. This figure is actual PET data showing binding in the ventral striata of recovering anorexics on the left and healthy women on the right. And we can see on the left that there's significantly more red in the ventral striata, which means that there is more binding in the recovering anorexics than in the healthy women. So what is the significance that there is increased dopamine binding in recovering anorexics versus healthy women? Well, there are two important parts to this. First, that dopamine, thus we know that dopamine plays a very important role in eating disorders, and that the ventral striata also plays an important role in eating disorders. And with these two clues combined, we can deduce that the reward system is very important in eating disorders. And so how is this manifested in the episode? Well, it explains why Emma continues to try to lose weight even after she is below a healthy weight, and why she feels so good about losing weight, because there's a constant reward mechanism. So that is why eating disorders are self-perpetuating. The second study I want to focus on relates to a scene in the show where Emma cuts out pictures of thin models as a goal to strive to. So the study is called A Neural Signature of Anorexia Nervosa in the Ventral Striatal Reward System. And it's important to note that the ventral striata area is the area of the brain that was highlighted in the last study. So the hypothesis of this paper was that females with anorexia nervosa would show altered responsiveness to pictures of overweight, healthy, and thin women in the ventral striatal area as compared to the response of healthy women. And they did this by first asking the patients to guess the weights of these three different body types, then evaluating how the patients felt about these three different body types, and lastly, scanning their brain while they were looking at the images of these three different body types to see areas of activation. Here are the results of this study. In the top graph, we see the responses to the weight task and the feel task. And it's important to note that anorexics preferred the underweight body type to the normal and overweight body type in all situations. The bottom image is a little more confusing, but the color denotes whether the subjects were looking at underweight images or normal weight images, and the left side of the graph is the responses from the normal women, and the right side is the anorexic women. And from this we can see that anorexic women responded much more highly to the underweight images, which is the blue bar, than the normal weight images in the red bar. And it's important to note again that this activity was taking place in the ventral striata. So what is the significance of this in relation to the episode of Degrassi? Well, first, this study just backs up the evidence that the ventral striata is very important in eating disorders, and thus the reward system is important in eating disorders. And it also explains Emma's collection of pictures of thin models because it was more stimulating to the reward system. In conclusion, I think that the portrayal of anorexia nervosa in Degrassi, The Next Generation, is very accurate. Emma's anorexia is very self-perpetuating and closely related to the reward system, as we see when she cuts out pictures of thin women. Overall, Emma's portrayal of anorexia is quite accurate because her outward symptoms demonstrate a reward-related disease.